We control the horizontal. We control the vertical. Peer into the infrared.
Nerds, gamers, and fans, this is Tales from the Infrared! Join us as we dive into fandom and explore comics, gaming, sci-fi, and fantasy, all from a red pill perspective. Hold on to your phasers, it's time for a Nerdgasm! With your hosts, Dean Esme and Christian Chiasson.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Tales from the Infrared. My name is Christian and I am your host. Joining me as always, the fat neckbeard himself, Dean Esme. How's it going?
Hey, my fellow fat neckbeard, Christian, this is Dean. Things are going pretty good today. I'm looking forward to our show.
That's great, that's great. Also joining us again for the second show in a row, we have Jim Calvarn. How's it going, Jim?
It's going wonderful. And for everybody out there, may the 4th be with you.
Ha! He got it in.
You little prick. And of course, joining us again for her second show of Tales from the Infrared, the Honey Badger Honey Badger herself, Rachel Edwards.
Hey, everybody.
I'm going to quickly pass it over to Dean. We're going to do a quick couple of minutes just to lay out, I guess, the groundwork for the stories that we'll be covering today in this show. So, Dean, why don't you go ahead and tell us what the show's about?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, whoever you are. Christian, that would be your name. That's right. Yeah, we're getting kind of back to the old school format for our Tales from the Infrared, where we bring up a few interesting stories just to give us something to talk about. You'll find all these stories with links in the show notes on avoiceformen.com, and when this archive goes up on YouTube, links to those will be there. So just interesting things happening in Nerdland that might interest people. First off, the Farscape movie is happening. If you haven't heard of Farscape, that was a science fiction show from the 90s that had a big cult following and still has a number of fans. And at WonderCon over the weekend of the 20th, Rockne O'Bannon confirmed that a Farscape movie is going to happen. It's set almost 2 decades after the series ended, and the film will follow John and Erin's son, Dargo. Because the baby was exhibiting a set of interesting powers that made him a magnet for galactic villains by the time the show ended, we find that John and Erin hide their son on Earth to grow up. Now the kid is 19 and ready to go into space with his parents. So possibly Farscape fans will have something to look forward to and or be disappointed in, I guess. Maybe we'll talk about that in this discussion segment.
And possibly Superman fans too, because that's kind of almost the exact same
It is an interesting
story.
parallel there, isn't it? Yeah, sort of does sound like the Superman story. In other words, yes, tomorrow is May the 4th. Today's May 3rd, but we'll go ahead and say it. May the 4th be with you. That is the official total geekwad greeting Star Wars Day, May the 4th. And in Star Wars news, Star Wars Episode 7 has started filming. For any Star Wars nerd, this is almost certainly a great day of celebration, or maybe it's a great disturbance in the Force. With the start of filming for Episode 7, it's now clear that the new film is to be set right after the end of Episode 6, which was the Return of the Jedi movie. This is raising a lot of questions because that film was made 30 years ago. Yet events are supposed to take place right after that film. So those actors from Episode 6 are a lot older. I'm not even sure they're all still alive. I'd have to go back and check. So are they going to be like CGI de-aging these characters? They're going to just substitute new actors for them? What are they going to do? It'll all be revealed over time, but right now we're not sure if they're going to improve the series or fall further into the dark side like the last 3 movies did. I do know, I believe that J.J. Abrams is directing this or producing this new one, so I have a lot of faith personally in J.J. Abrams, but we'll see. But this movie has already also got other controversies. Fans of something called the Star Wars Expanded Universe may not be very happy. The Star Wars Expanded Universe includes a lot of books and video games and cartoons and things like that that have been created in the years that were not strictly in the movie. We got 2 stories that talk about that and in the show notes. And the bottom line is that out of the desire to give maximum creative freedom to the new filmmakers, as well as being able to surprise the audience, the next 3 Star Wars film, episodes 7 through 9, will not tell the same stories as they have been told in the post-Return of Jedi expanded universe. What that means is that the new storytellers will be picking and choosing what of the expanded universe will be allowed to stay and what will be thrown in the trash. This is likely to cause controversy among fans. Those who have actually kept up with the expanded universe will probably have strong feelings about it. Those who don't even know about the expanded universe, I guess, probably won't care. So this should be fun to talk about during the discussion section. Also, in more real science news that sort of relates, there's some physics students who've created what some are calling a real-world Star Wars deflector shield. I take exception to that, since the original deflector shields, at least on television, were on Star Trek, not Star Wars. You Star Wars nerds suck. Star Trek rules. No, just kidding. But 4 physics students at the University of Leicester have designed a concept for fully operational deflector shields. The biggest problem with their design at the moment would be that it would blind the person they're trying to protect. Still, anybody who is a Star Wars, actually general science fiction geek, will note that the deflector shield is used to redirect lasers from directly impacting. However, this current version worked up by the physics students really isn't practical for that. It is based on the ionosphere of our planet. It allows the deflection of electromagnetic radiation away from the object. While this isn't likely to be used for practical purposes anytime soon, it might be used for doing things like trapping radiation inside a shell of plasma. Still, it's interesting to see that people are actually working on this concept, and that some sort of force field is already starting to come into existence. It should be interesting to see what the next few decades bring and see if they can get it to do more than that. Also in technology news, this has got a lot of people's blood pressure up. The FCC, the American Federal Communications Commission, has shifted its position and is now going to allow what are so-called fast lanes for web traffic, for internet traffic. Now, this standard will allow internet service providers to impose a new price of entry for innovation on the internet. This means that ISPs will be able to control who can and can't deliver their content, at least to a certain extent. While they do say now that there's a basis to allow for the purchasing of faster streaming, it seems to be a way to keep newer and more innovative companies from competing in the internet arena. The arguments for this is that, well, those pipes, those internet connections belong to that internet service provider, and they should be allowed to charge whatever they want. The counter argument is that the internet should be considered like a common carrier, like telephone service, since it is a resource everybody uses. And so right now, a lot of people, especially who big believers in free markets over anything and everything else, say that the internet service provider should be able to charge whatever they want for whatever reason they want, anytime they want, and if you don't like it, go get your internet somewhere else. People on the other side of this argument say, no. Corporations don't have an inherent right to be on the internet, and there should be rules of the road that everybody has to engage in, and it should be neutral to traffic type. Hank of the Vlog Brothers did a pretty neat 3.5-minute video on this where he debates both parts of that issue and does a pretty good job, although it's pretty clear whose side he's on at the end. He reveals whose side he's on at the end. A link to that is also to be found in the show notes. Finally, well, no, not quite yet finally, Supernatural fans, of which I am somewhat one and increasingly somewhat less of one, but Supernatural fans may be interested to note that Supernatural is probably creating a spin-off. This last week's episode aired just this last Tuesday. Was what's called an unofficial pilot, or sometimes called a backdoor pilot. It was aired on Tuesday the 29th, and what it's going to be is a spin-off of Supernatural. Not really featuring the characters from the current show, even though the sort of backdoor pilot they aired on Tuesday the 29th did feature the main characters from the main Supernatural series. Basically, this new series will be set in the city of Chicago, which is supposedly controlled by 4 warring families of different types of monsters. So it's sort of like Dallas, the TV show like Dallas meets The Godfather meets Supernatural, all in the city of Chicago. Some are very skeptical whether this will work. Other people are really hyped about it because the Supernatural universe has kind of developed an interesting canon full of different kinds of creatures and rules about how they behave. We'll see. I saw the episode. I don't know if I'm the only one who did, but maybe we'll talk about it during the discussion segment. And finally, we have an article that set a lot of our teeth on edge here at Tales from the Infrared. Game of Thrones rape culture. That's right, Game of Thrones. I think this was 2 episodes ago. It was aired since our last episode anyway. Essentially, you have a scene wherein Jaime Lannister pretty much rapes his sister. Pretty much. I think we might want to argue over that one just a little bit, but it looked like a rape to me. So apparently, though, a writer had to go and take this scene, which was a sex scene between Cersei and Jaime Lannister, as proof that we live in a rape culture. Yep, that's right. Yeah, sure, it was basically a rape scene. It was severely changed from the books, just as often happens in a lot of scenes from the book. But we pretty much fail to see how showing a rape is proof that we live in a rape culture. There's a lot of murdering and killing in that show, quite a bit more than there is raping. I'm not sure I recall there ever having been a rape on the show before, which is now in its 4th season.
It was an attempted rape, though. Sansa almost got raped. Sansa almost got raped,
yeah.
But it was stopped by the Hound. And
that's right.
And there was a bit of Khal Drogo.
That's right. Well, you know what? Why don't we just jump right into the discussion section and just start talking about this, because I want to talk about how the Game of Thrones really has ratcheted up our rape and child abuse culture. and our murder and child abuse culture, because there's lots of killing and there's lots of what is obviously child abuse in that show. So isn't Game of Thrones really proof that we live in a murder culture and a child abuse culture?
Well, let me put it this way. That scene of Game of Thrones is about as much proof that we live in a rape culture as the movie Death Wish is. If anybody remembers seeing the movie Death Wish with, what's his name, Jeff Goldblum. That's the way I see it.
I actually could not get through this guy's column. I was so pissed off. What the fuck? Seriously? Okay. Are we all agreed that that was a rape scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
I'm a bit skeptical myself, but for the sake of argument, I'll just go with it. Yeah.
Well, she was definitely saying no, and she was definitely fighting. You could argue that she could have fought back harder, but we'll go with it. So, and now that I think about it, I do recall at least one other scenes that where it looked like some guys were possibly raping some chicks at Sword Point a few episodes earlier.
Absolutely. It was actually last episode, and I think the episode, I can't remember. Basically, the members of the Night's Watch had a mutiny, and they took over, I think it was Craster's cabin, where all of his incest daughters were making incest babies with him originally, and basically they're raping all of them. And in fact, if anything turned my stomach in that show, it was that, because they were basically saying that they rape them to death and stuff like that. I'm like, well, shit. Everybody is pissed at, like, Cersei getting raped, but, like, a whole cabin full of, like, women that have been forced to make incest babies for years getting raped to death? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's because Cersei's the Queen Regent. Everybody's supposed to care about her. Nobody gives a shit about a fucking incest daughter from beyond the wall.
Fucking double standards.
Okay, well, more to the point, and I'm going to keep going back to it. I mean, okay, rape is something that happens in the real world, and it doesn't just happen to women, but fine, I'm not going to even try and get into that side of that fucking argument. And it's not just something men do, and I'm not going to try and get into that side of the argument either. But seriously, I mean, these people have a pre-existing sexual relationship. Jamie obviously went too far in that particular case. It's arguably rape, although she's not too pissed about it, apparently, since as we've seen in the subsequent episode.
She seemed to me more upset that her son had died and that the dead body of her son was literally inches away from them.
Mm-hmm.
She seemed more upset about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Jim, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm gonna reiterate the point Christian just made. Yeah, she seemed upset about the fact that it was their son who just died was right there. I think if he'd have waited a little bit, she probably would have jumped at his ass and screwed his brains out.
Rachel?
She seemed more upset that Jamie was taking Tyrion's side. Because she was saying, I want you to kill him, I know he did it, blah, 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 and why aren't you on my side? Oh, you're not on my side? Fuck you. That seems to be the attitude. She doesn't really seem to be too upset about the rape, but it seems to me like they're wanting to have an excuse for why they're suddenly drawing apart. I don't know.
And that gets into another thing, but I'm just going to make this point one more time. If a rape scene, and that this ambiguous one, where there was a much less ambiguous one earlier, but she's the main character. If this is proof of rape culture, I want to know why Game of Thrones is not proof that we live in a murder culture and a child abuse culture, because you see that shit all the time on the show. Why? My brain is just so full of fuck. This is beyond stupid. Rape happens anytime we want to put a rape scene in. This generates controversy, but these other things don't. I don't know. What do you think, Jim?
We live in a dragon culture. I mean, Game of Thrones is proof of that.
Yes, we obviously live in a culture that reveres and loves dragons too. That's how our culture works, right?
There is this. Oh, go on. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, the thing I wanna say is, and it goes back to, you have the scene where there's a bunch of people getting raped to death, women, children, and nobody's upset about that. I think it's more a case of we're so obsessed with the aristocracy more than we are with defending women. And women are trying to become the aristocracy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, a hell of a lot of terrible stuff happens to the wildlings and just the common people, but nobody bats an eye. Like, I think it was like last episode or the episode before, a child's parents are like completely slaughtered in front of him, and then some guy pulls him aside and says, "I'm gonna eat them, okay? I'm a cannibal." And nobody bats an eye at that. But Cersei gets raped and everybody shits a brick. A whole cabin full of women who have been raped their entire lives are suddenly being raped to death by Night's Watch, and nobody gives a shit. But Cersei getting raped, that's proof of rape culture.
This is a show where we actually saw two little boys burned to death and their bodies put on display. This doesn't get that kind of reaction. That doesn't get that kind of reaction. This does. People in this culture are just fucked up. I mean, this is a show about violence and death. It just is. So, in the meantime, since we're still talking about Game of Thrones, so I spent a whole lot of time defending my thesis last episode, and I was wrong, wasn't I? Cersei did not kill her own son.
You were wrong.
Yep.
Although, it's starting to look a lot like I was right about Alina.
Alina being
involved.
I'm trying to remember who Alina is. I'm trying to remember who Alina is.
Alina, is it Alina Martell?
Yep.
No,
Tyrell.
Martell or Tyrell.
Alina Tyrell, right.
Marjorie's, grandmother.
Marjorie's grandmother, yep. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now, not only is the implication very strongly that it was Marjorie in the show, but in the books, it's clearly spelled out, she did it. So, it's her. We know it's her. I mean, it's more or less stated there as strongly as it could be on the show, and as subsequent events on the show are going to show, yes, she did it.
The power of deduction, dear Watson.
That's right. She did it. I find myself wondering what the hell she's thinking. I mean, although she does kind of say it in the show, doesn't she? You didn't think I was going to let you marry that monster, did I? Did you? So she's got bigger plans. It's just not clear to me what her bigger plans are.
Now, something tells me that she had actually planned to kill Joffrey after the marriage was consummated, just because she did make the fair point that you made on the last show, was that because the marriage wasn't consummated, Marjorie is technically not queen.
Yeah, Marjorie is now actually kind of in a twilight zone, isn't she? She's not, I mean, you might even say she's a quasi-queen, but really she's got nothing. Power is passing straight to Joffrey's younger brother. His grandfather seems quite pleased with this development, I notice. I don't know, what do you think, Rachel?
Well, it appears to me that they're actually going to marry her to the younger brother, because that's at least what's being hinted at. They're like, yeah, we're gonna try to go towards that. That's what we're in arrangements to do, and we know that he is probably more easily manipulated, so that really benefits the Tyrells in a great way. But
well, it's clear Marjorie is certainly trying to manipulate him already, isn't she?
Yep.
Jim, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think you guys covered it, but it did seem like the plan was to get her in good with Joffrey's younger brother, get them to at least get it so that she could, if not manipulate him, keep him under her thumb to a better extent than, say, Cersei and his grandfather.
Well, you know, it's hard to imagine anybody who would be harder to control than Joffrey was. That's for damn sure. So there is that. I was also interested in this last episode to see how, we're finally starting to see how White Walkers come to exist, don't we?
Well, there's different ways. I mean, they, as far as I know, they could raise the dead, but they could also turn living people into White Walkers as well. And it's two different things. It's like when they raise somebody from the dead, it's almost like they're a mindless zombie, just sort of, somehow psychically tapped into the hive mind so that they know what their orders are and what they have to do. But then when somebody who's living gets turned, it's almost as if they're smarter.
That may be the case. I guess we'll find out in future episodes. God knows the pacing of the show is so slow. It might not be till the end of the season till we see more of that. I guess we got something to look forward to next week. But I'm still enjoying the hell out of the show. How about you guys?
Oh,
I'm loving it. And the whole bit about go on.
I was going to say, it's actually growing on me as I'm catching up. I'm keeping up with season 4 while going back and catching the previous seasons. It's getting there.
How far have you caught up on the first 3 seasons?
I'm a little over. I think I have to watch episode 8 for season 2.
Oh, okay. So you're you're almost done with season 2. So you're getting there. You're getting there. You're kind of knowing what's going on. Well, it's totally worth it. I happen to know that Paul Elam has recently himself entered season 3 as he catches them up on them. So we may have to have him on an episode of this one day to talk Game of Thrones nerdery, because Dr. Tara Palmatier is also a huge Game of Thrones nerd. So we could just have a big old Voice for Men nerd fest on Game of Thrones one of these days. Maybe when the 4th season finishes. God knows what the hell we'll talk about after that.
We'll bitch that we have to wait another year.
Oh, no lie. No lie. So, is anybody here a Farscape fan? Because I gotta be honest with you, I tried watching one episode, I saw puppets, I couldn't get into it.
Yeah, I couldn't get into it either. I mean, I know about the show, I'm aware of its existence, and I've seen a couple of, episodes just sort of, I've seen a few minutes of a few episodes just sort of channel surfing every now and again, but I never got into it.
I have nerd friends who are fans, and I don't disrespect them, but I just couldn't get into it. Rachel, you ever watch it?
No, I think when it was first running, I was in high school or something like that. And it was way on beyond the time I was allowed to be up. Actually, no, probably in middle school. When I think about it, I wasn't allowed to be up that late. I didn't have Sci-Fi Channel. That was the good cable.
All right, so Jim Kilvarn is the only one who has an opinion. So lay it on us. What do you think about this Farscape movie idea?
Well, I watched the whole thing. Granted, I had to buy it all on DVD because I didn't have time to watch it when it was on air, but I watched all 4 seasons and the made-for-TV, I guess it's a movie. It's like 6-8 hours long.
All right, so give us your thumbs up, thumbs down on that. Should we go check it out? Is it worth the investment of going and checking it out, or what?
I would say it's worth the investment of checking it out just because it actually, as it goes along, gets really good. For the movie coming out, no, let the show die. This doesn't need to be made.
Well, okay. Hollywood is in the habit of rebooting series, although this doesn't sound like a reboot, but just trying to continue the old show. But I mean, it sounds like you're one of my spiritual brothers. I am firmly of the belief that most things should just end. Write the words "the end" and leave the fond memories alone. Why do you have to keep going, dragging every last bit out of it? But maybe it'll be a really good movie. How do you know? You don't know.
Well, yeah, if they do it, there's a saying someone I know uses a lot. You know, if you give a really good story, and it depends upon the medium, but for say movies, if you give a good story, you have good acting, and you do it well, you're gonna draw an audience. And if they do that, yes, phenomenal. Hey, I'll jump behind them if they do it well. Hollywood, however, is not known for doing something well in sequels or anything like that. It's all about the money. They don't give a shit.
Now, but this is the original creator of the show who's doing this, right?
Yes, Rockne O'Bannon is the original creator of the show. You also have Claudia Black and Ben Browder. They're coming back. Yeah, I honestly think it could be very well done, and Rockne O'Bannon is going to continue it off from the comic books that they had started to continue the show. But
really?
Yeah, there's also some comic books that that's how you know that the aliens were trying to go after Aaron and oh god, I forgot his name. Give me a second.
John? Aaron and John's son?
Aaron and John's son. Yeah.
Well, all right. So it sounds like they're treating their own expanded universe with some respect.
That's more than we can say for Star Wars.
That's more than we can say for Star Wars. Well, maybe I've been looking for something new to watch lately, so maybe I'll check out Farscape. But did anybody else see the backdoor pilot for Supernatural Bloodlines?
Yes, no, I did.
I didn't.
Did you see it, Rachel? You don't follow?
I don't follow Supernatural at the moment, but it's one of those things that's been on my to-do list for a long time.
You know, I'm having a real hard time recommending it to people. I mean, the first 6 to 7 seasons were so much fun, and yet I'm getting to where I'm like, I just kind of want it to go away now, and it won't go away. And I personally watched that backdoor pilot, and I thought, I have really no interest whatsoever in this Bloodlines thing. I mean, there's so much wrong with it, in fact. It goes right against the grain of the whole mentality of the show, right? I mean, Dean and Sam are actually just kind of down with these good guy monsters when under normal circumstances they kill most of them without a blink, and now we find out that all of Chicago is being run by monster families, and it's sort of like a mafia, and I'm just going, what the fuck is this shit? What are they doing? Why do I care? What did you think, Jim?
Well, I thought it was decently done for an episode, and, you know, we've said it before, I'm not a big fan of the show anymore, but it almost got me interested enough to at least check out Bloodlines. But at the same time, it's something I'd seen late 90s, early 2000 with World of Darkness's Kindred the Embraced. It just seems like they're taking that concept and adding more monsters. Though I do have to disagree with what you said, it seems like they're willing to work with monsters. Dean said it perfectly when he said, you know, sometimes you got to work with the bad guys to get to the worst guys.
All right, you mean Dean on the show, obviously.
Yeah.
No,
Dean
you're right,
Winchester.
but usually the Winchesters are just a little more resistant to that than they were this time. I don't know. But yeah, no, you're right. It's not completely out of character. It just seemed like they were just too blasé about it. Like they were just trying to establish an excuse for monster hunters to decide, well, we're just going to leave the entire city of Chicago alone. Like, what? Okay, what? I don't know. Maybe when Supernatural Bloodlines airs, which I'm sure it will, I'll check it out, but boy, they're going to have to work harder to get my interest. I'm sensing Christian doesn't give a shit at all. Have you completely given up on Supernatural, Christian, or?
I pretty much have. I mean, I've watched up until, I believe, episode 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8 in the current season. And after that, I just stopped caring. Because honestly, I think for me, it's already overstayed its welcome. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Did it jump the shark?
yeah.
I would say it jumped the shark at the end of season 6. That's where I think they should have ended it. But that's my
If you ask me, they should have that episode where they go into where they cross the portal into the alternate universe where they are them they are the actors that play them in the show, like they are Jared Allen. That was they should have saved that for like the season finale of that season and just ended it there.
That would have been fun.
I'm of the opinion that a show is best when it has a clear beginning and a clear end, even if it's really short.
I agree. I really seriously agree, and I've said this before. I think that, I mean, at this point, the only show that exists that I'm willing to give a free pass on is Doctor Who, and it only manages to get a free pass because they change actors every 4 to 5 years, or actually not even every few years, basically.
Every 2 or 3 years, and they
depending. They keep it fresh that way. And
Peter Capaldi should be really cool.
I really can't wait.
He's going to be amazing.
He is an amazing Doctor.
I'm totally looking forward to Peter Capaldi, even though Matt Smith. It took a while for him to grow on me because I was a huge fan of David Tennant. But Peter Capaldi, I'm really looking forward to. I want to see what they can do with him.
Yeah, I was a huge Tennant fan.
Wow.
Now, I think the rumor is that Clara is only going to be on for the first half of the first season, and they're going to introduce a new companion. That's the rumor. That's not set in stone, and I have no evidence of this whatsoever, but that's the rumor. But if it is true, I'd be interested to see who they bring on as a more permanent companion, much like what Amy Pond was for Matt Smith.
The usual pattern with Doctor Who, and this is seriously like going back 50 years, is that the Doctor loses a companion, he picks up a new companion, the Doctor changes, the old companion or companions stay around with the new Doctor for a while, and then that old companion goes away, and a new companion shows up, and that's one of the ways they vary it up. Matt Smith's tenure as the Doctor was the only one I can recall where you started with a brand new companion and a brand new Doctor at once in the introductory episode, so that the companion and the Doctor both appeared for the first time in the same episode. That was unusual for the history of Doctor Who. I mean, I thought they did well, and in fact, I'm a huge Matt Smith fan. Fuck David Tennant. Matt Smith rules.
What the hell is wrong with Eugene?
That is heresy.
Oh, God.
Heresy.
How can you say that? Like,
No,
even I have to chime in on this one. That was just really fucked up, dude.
that was a cheap shot, man.
Burn him! Burn him!
I get Rachel's point. Things are typically, with the exception of Doctor Who and maybe one or two others, things are a lot better when there's a definitive beginning and a definitive end. And it doesn't matter how long or how short it is. Well, I guess, if it goes on too long, sure. But it doesn't matter how short it is, as long as there's a definitive beginning and a definitive end, things are much, much better when it's done that way. Just like Star Wars. If you ask me, Return of the Jedi should have been it.
I just want to clarify something. I was only teasing about David Tennant, although I'm an old school Doctor Who fan. You get used to the who's your favorite Doctor argument because everybody likes to have that argument. But I did like David Tennant, but I will say I did like Matt Smith more. I know I'm in the minority on that. I did like Matt Smith more, but David Tennant was a fine Doctor.
I'm with you there. I liked Matt Smith more than I liked David Tennant, but I did like David Tennant. He was a fun Doctor. David Tennant was a great Doctor, but I just think Matt Smith brought the silliness with him, whereas David Tennant was a bit more of he was a serious doctor that tried to be silly from time to time. Matt Smith was just a flat-out eccentric. He was eccentric from pretty much beginning to end.
Yeah.
He just did things for the sake of doing them. Like, I have no idea I have no idea what's gonna happen when I do this, but let's do it anyway.
I think the perfect example of the kind of show that can be, short but has a sort of a clear confines is Sherlock. It's like each season is only 3 episodes, but all of them are really great quality. The cinematography is on, the storytelling is always great, and I really feel satisfied. I mean, it's got great rewatchability, unlike
They're
some
also
shows.
really long too. Like, aren't they like 90 minutes a piece or 120 minutes?
I think it's like an hour each. Each episode, I think, is like an hour each. But each season's like one long movie, and it's great.
Well, it's like it's actually I'm gonna liken it to actually getting 3 movies a year, 3 Sherlock movies a year because they're so long. They're not 60 minutes. I know they're longer than 60 minutes. I think they're like 90 at the very least. But it's like having 3 Sherlock Holmes movies each year. Although I think this year they're not going to do a season because Martin Freeman is really, really busy doing the filming for The Hobbit.
Really? I thought they were done with that.
No, there's another season, I believe. They're signed on, I think, for another season or 2, and that's about it.
No, I meant with The Hobbit. I thought they had just completely finished filming The Hobbit, and they were just, still in post-production on that. You mean they're still filming The Hobbit?
I think so.
I think there's still some filming that has to be done for the 3rd movie.
Shit, man.
Well, okay. I mean, I think they could have shot that whole thing in 6 months and everything else would have been post-production, but whatever. I do think Christian is right, too. I think the average length of an episode of Sherlock is about 90 minutes, so you really kind of get 3 movies out of Sherlock, but whatever. Yeah, but in general, it sounds like we all agree. Shows should end. They should write the end before the audience gets a chance to say, we're tired of you now. That's certainly how I feel about it. So, and I just get the feeling Supernatural's going that way. I will say I agree with, I think Jim said this, if Supernatural announces that they're doing a season 10 and that will be the final season, I will stick with it. But if they're just going to keep going until fans are bored, like, there's a reason I don't watch The Simpsons anymore, and that's because they'd stopped being interesting to me 12 years ago. I can't believe that show is still on the air. And I used to love that show.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah, exactly. I don't agree. Yeah. So, all right. Well, fuck, man. Star Wars.
I tried to segue into Star Wars.
But... Yeah, Star Wars.
Well,
oh gosh. Well, now we're here.
And apparently, while the Farscape people respect their own, canon, the people making Farscape respects their canon. The Star Wars people don't, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, probably the biggest offender of that was Lucas himself. I mean, he had a brilliant, and I mean absolutely brilliant motto for filmmaking when he was doing episodes 4, 5, and 6. He put the story first. He actually said in an interview that all these special effects that he was using in episode 4, 5, and 6 were only framing devices to tell the story. Whereas with episodes 1, 2, and 3, he completely flipped the script. The story went out the fucking window, and it was all effects. How much CG can we pack into a scene as possible? And he destroyed the Star Wars canon because of that.
Jim?
Well,
Sorry.
no, it's all right. I've read the majority of the Star Wars books and a lot of the comic books. Like I said, Star Wars is my biggest fandom. And they came up with some of the greatest things in the books. You notice in chat, Kimsky's yelling Thrawn, Thrawn, Thrawn. There's actually a 3-book series.
What's Thrawn?
It's affectionately referred to as the Thrawn series. Thrawn is a Chiss Grand Admiral who comes back not too long after the end of Return of the Jedi, and pretty much damn near demolishes the Republic.
Okay.
It was one of the best books I had read in a long time, and I'm an avid reader. But it was 3 books, and all 3 of them together was just phenomenal. Timothy Zahn he brought you into the Star Wars universe with these books. He introduced a character known as the Hand of the Emperor named Mara Jade, who eventually became Luke Skywalker's wife. These are things that, because of the expanded universe, were just, people loved them. And to see something like Mara Jade or Thrawn disappear is just a betrayal. But even though they actually ended up killing Mara Jade later on in the books, in the recent books that just came out, it's still just to retcon and say this may not happen. It just, yeah.
James, you had something to say?
Yeah, George Lucas. I lost all respect for Lucasfilms when he came out with friggin' Jar Jar Binks. It was out the window for me. all done. All done. I don't even know if I'm really gonna have to pull my own teeth, so to speak, just to go see another Star Wars movie after that shit.
All right, so I'm going to take a total counter position to all of you, and I'll tell. Let me. I'm going to say a few things. First off, George Lucas has extremely limited talents as a filmmaker. He really does. You watch his fucking films; he was never that good at it. And let's face it, he had written the basic storylines for 9 episodes. And he chose to start with episode 4 because he thought that was the strongest and that the backstory wasn't all that strong. So instead of finishing the backstory, he just went with what he already had thought from the beginning was a weak backstory. Furthermore, and I remember this going back to the 90s, Star Wars was developing its own expanded universe while they were filming the first 3 films, episodes 4, 5, and 6. There were books being put out at that time, and comic books, and video games, with people developing storylines. And when he started, including backstory stuff, and when he started on episodes 1, 2, and 3, he said, fuck all that, I'm not paying any attention to it. It didn't happen. And none of it's canon. And I don't really care whether fans like it or not, because Star Wars is mine, and I'm going to do what I like. George Lucas was famous for never having looked at any of the Star Wars games and never having read any of the Star Wars novels or comics or any of it. He didn't care. He just signed it away for the money. So he never cared about his expanded universe in the first place. He threw it out, an already pre-exist, because I'd read some of these books. He threw it all away himself when he made episodes 1, 2, and 3 and declared them all non-canon. So since episodes 1, 2, and 3 have come out, they've the Clone Wars cartoons and some comics and some books, and now the new filmmakers are going to throw it out again. Well, George Lucas already set that precedent and told fans he doesn't give a shit anyway. So, I guess I sympathize if you're a fan of the extended universe, but Lucas has kind of been a dick about this all along anyway.
You are right. I mean, even during, I think, the filming of Crystal Skull, I think he was wearing a shirt that said Han shot first on it. I'm like, you son of a bitch!
There you go. There you go, Han shot first.
You fucking plaid-shirted bastard!
That's right. George Lucas is just I love him for what he's created, but it's like it's hard not to have a love-hate relationship with the guy. So, hang on a minute.
Well, I'll jump in real quick. I got to agree with Dean. It is hard to have not to have a love-hate relationship with Lucas, because if you really look, he even goes back and retcons some of the stuff he did in the original 3 episodes. You remember Return of the Jedi, Leia's talking about knowing her mother. But how could she know her mother if her mother died on the birthing table? Yeah, Dean's right. He did pretty much give a big fuck you to everybody. He gave that with the redone versions of the movies.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, and beyond that, and I'll shut up now and let Rachel or somebody else talk after this. I have thought for the longest time, although there were things to like about episodes 1, 2, and 3, almost everybody agrees they're weak, right? Pretty fucking weak. I have thought for the longest time somebody needs to take Star Wars away from George Lucas and give it to somebody who actually can make a decent film, because he hasn't made a decent film since 1977, for fuck's sake. So I'm happy to see it put in new creative hands. I really am. And as far as I know, isn't J.J. Abrams directing this new one? He's a good filmmaker.
Yeah, expect lens flare.
Okay. Well, I will agree with you, Dean. It did need to be taken out of his hands. It's Disney, for God's sake! I do not want to see Darth Mouse.
Too late. No, but 2 words: Hayden Christensen, and I have opened a can of worms. Hayden Christensen.
Who the fuck is that again?
The worst thing Lucas ever did was at the end, when he re-released the DVD set of episodes 4, 5, and 6. End of Return of the Jedi. He removed the original actor and replaced him with Hayden Christensen.
Hayden Christensen was the guy who was playing Anakin Skywalker, and he was probably the worst choice that they could have had for the character, or for an actor as the character, because you're supposed to really like him at some point. But when
you just want to punch him in the face.
Yeah, when episode 2 comes in, you're like, I'm supposed to like him. He's supposed to be a sympathetic character. He's a little shit. I don't care about him.
Yeah, I thought Anakin was a little bitch. Yeah.
Okay, a pillow on top of another pillow has more sexual chemistry between than Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman. Just like a pillow on top of another pillow. Just that's. Let's no, seriously. The whole thing, I'm thinking, dude, get your hands off her. Like, you're not good for her.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay, Rachel, that was an awesome burn on him, and I'm going to chime in and say, yes, Hayden Christensen did the worst possible job that I could imagine for anybody playing Anakin. I mean, yes, to a certain degree, you can understand. He loved her, he really did, but God, no, you could tell there was nothing there. There could be nothing there. I think she just gave in because he was so persistent.
Yeah, and she probably didn't have
She gave in because that's how the script was written. But
exactly.
Hayden Christensen actually played Anakin. He was supposed to play Anakin like he is some really smart, talented super Jedi. Like, he's so young, but he's much more powerful and much more skillful as a Jedi than his own master. However, what he actually did was he played Anakin like he was creepy, cocky, sort of almost half retarded and lost teenager that had almost like he was playing me in high school. And I was really bad with women in high school.
He was an egotistical narcissist that thought he was better than everybody else.
Yeah, although he came off very creepy and almost like he was too shy to say anything, but he did, and when he did open his mouth, it just came off like creepy. Have I used the word creepy yet? Creepy.
Can you use it one more time?
It was really, really sort of... It's like, oh man, I never stopped thinking about you since I was a kid. Like, dude!
It was almost like he was imagining what she would look like, skinned alive, hanging in his closet.
And there's a moment where he tells her, like, I killed every single person in that camp, even the kids. And she's like, oh... That's the moment you step away from a relationship, okay? I mean, he wasn't even the least bit sympathetic. He was like...
You think maybe that's your red flag? All right, once again, just to be contrary, I'm going to defend Hayden Christensen. Now, be clear on something. I'm not going to defend Anakin Skywalker or the character, but I'm going to defend the actor Hayden Christensen, because you know why? He was given that script to work with. And and this is true of all the characters, all the actors who were on the episodes 1 through 3, which everybody pretty universally agrees were pretty weak, right? I have been a Star Wars fan. I'm probably the only one here who's actually old enough to have seen it in theaters when it came out. Am I?
No, I actually did, but I was 2 years old at the time.
Wait, which one? The first?
When the very first episode of Star Wars came out, which was probably before you were born.
That was before I was born.
Okay. So I've been a Star Wars nerd longer than anybody here. I've been a Star Wars nerd longer than some of you have been alive. Ha! Okay, so if you really look at it, when it comes to dialogue, George Lucas can't write it very well. If you really even look at quotes from those movies, who ever says much that's all that memorable, except for Yoda, and that's just because he talks funny, right?
Han had some really good memorable lines.
Actually,
a few. One of them was his most famous line was an ad lib. And it wasn't even in the script.
A lot of people ad-libbed in the first trilogy. In fact, that's what I remember.
Everything ever said by Chewbacca can be quoted.
This is true.
Most of the first movie, I think, was ad-libbed because there was a script, of course, but then, the characters came in and then they developed the characters because his development of the characters was shit.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I've seen interviews with multiple members of the cast, including Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford, and they were all saying the same thing, that when they were on the set, well, first off, Alec Guinness didn't even want to be there. He was embarrassed to be part of the movie. And it was just a job for him, so he was more or less phoning it in. It's just because he had such good screen presence that Obi-Wan seemed cool. And the other actors were constantly complaining, looking at the dialogue, and how do you even say this? And they would go to Lucas and say, I can barely understand can you help me with character motivation? How do I say this? And Lucas's answer was, read the words that are on the page. That's how much direction they got from George Lucas. Just read those words there out loud. So any character development that happened because the actors wanted it to happen and kind of figured it out on their own, because George Lucas gave them nothing as a director but read what's on the page.
Yeah, and I even watched some of the behind-the-scenes footage on the newer trilogy, and they actually showed that basically he just made executive decisions because everybody else, the whole team would get shit together and then just hand it to him, and he would sign off on it or say if this looks good or not. I mean, it wasn't like he was really involved or knew I don't know, like he was actively involved in forming the character
I heard
development
the
and stuff like that.
I heard
And
the
so-
exact opposite. I heard that George Lucas, when he said something was going to happen, he surrounded himself with yes men.
Oh, yeah.
Yes men.
Here,
He made a decision, and everybody, even if they thought it was the worst possible idea ever, they just nodded and smiled like it was the greatest thing he'd ever thought of.
Okay, so listen. Let me finish my thought because I haven't quite followed it. You've got the first movie, the one come out in 1977, Episode 4. Nobody expects it to be big. Nobody expects it to be a hit. Nobody working on it even thought it was going to go over very well, and some of them were afraid it was going to ruin their careers. They thought it was so bad. This is why, for example, James Earl Jones is not named in the credits as Darth Vader's voice. He needed the money, but he didn't want to be publicly associated with the film. That's how bad everybody involved with the first film thought it was going to be. And whatever character development happened because Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill wanted to make it something, so they were on their own. My theory is that when he went back to make episodes 1, 2, and 3, everybody was too afraid to do that. And so they just did exactly as they were told by George Lucas, and they didn't try. And that's also probably part of what made those first 3 movies suck. The writing was just as wooden, the dialogue was just as wooden, and they were all too afraid of Lucas to even try to challenge him on anything or do anything their own way. This is George Lucas. This is a god. This is a guy who created the multi-billion-dollar empire. We can't fuck with it. We'll just do whatever he tells us, and it'll be great. That's my theory.
That actually would make a lot of sense, to be perfectly honest, because, like I said, he had a whole big team now, because when they started out, they didn't have a whole lot. In fact, a lot of what made the original movie was the music by John Williams.
Mm-hmm. And the special effects, and the very simple story, and it was new. No one had ever done anything like that before.
And 2 of the original movies were directed by somebody else.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which is right there where you could see him pulling away. Jim, I'm sorry, what?
I was going to say, the first one was written, directed by Lucas. The second one was written to an extent by Lucas, directed by Lawrence Kasdan, but the screenplay was also changed by, I'd have to look, but by somebody else as well. And that's why they progressively got better. And to this day, everybody says Empire was one of the best.
It was the best.
It was. I mean, it had that giant twist at the end where we find out that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father.
It was a dark film and brooding film. It was easily my favorite of the Star Wars series.
Yeah.
Sadly, that Vader being Luke's father was Lucas's idea.
Yeah, and he didn't even know going in. They didn't tell him before it was read. They didn't tell Mark Hamill, because they wanted his reaction to be legitimate. To be like, fuck! That's great.
So I frankly am really glad that Star Wars that Lucas signed off on Star Wars and says, all right, someone else take it over and do something with it. Good. But I don't know. You expanded the universe, junkies. They're still kind of pissed, huh? Because they're gonna pick you again.
I still don't know how I feel about Disney taking over. Cause
I know, I'm just gonna be so pissed.
Well, I don't expect them to sanitize it too much, because I mean, if you take a look at, they're also responsible for doing Pirates of the Caribbean, and they're not entirely clean movies.
Not anymore. Plus, they're Pixar now.
There's a lot of drinking, and there's it's
and Pixar's part of them now too. Pixar's part of them now too. And J.J. Abrams, I mean, he's in charge of this new project. Whether you like Abrams or not, and I'm a big fan, he's not going to turn it into some kind of wussified bullshit. At least I don't think so.
No, I mean, I know he's a good filmmaker, and I know that there are going to be a lot of things. It's just, I'm really afraid now. But then again, the comfort to me that makes me kind of want to see this is that you've got all of the original cast, or most of the original cast from the original trilogy. And I think, they're going to say, no, this is not something that this character would do, and they'll speak up.
Because they're not going to be afraid of George Lucas, who won't be there.
Yeah.
But my main concern, though, with Disney taking over is that in certain scenes, you'll see, you'll be able to make it out if you pay attention that, in the background, like a building column is actually just a painted dildo.
Well, all right, so let's
or in a very, very fast scene, like if they're on a city planet, and there's a really, really fast chase scene. If you actually freeze frame at a certain point in one of the windows, it's actually just a photo of a topless woman.
Or a priest will have a boner, or
yeah,
or something explicit will be spelled out in some dust.
Yeah. All right, so as the person who is completely not plugged into the expanded universe to begin with, what am I going to be missing out on? I mean, what's the best stuff from the expanded universe to check out?
Leia Organa and Han Solo's son becomes a Sith. Spoiler!
Damn. In where and what? Is this in books, comics, cartoons,
books,
what?
From what I understand, that's one of the main things that happens. Like, holy shit, he becomes a Sith Lord. And, not Sith Lord, I think is he a Padawan? But I think it's Jaden? I understand that much. I didn't actually go into
Jason Solo.
Yeah, Jason, there we go, Jason. And then his other siblings, and I think, like, Luke's son have to deal with all of this stuff, and I don't remember. But yeah, that's one of the main things. I think there's a couple wars, but then there's always wars in Star Wars.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're that pissed about
in a Jedi Academy, and hell, you could actually make an entire television series on a Jedi Academy, and that would probably be successful. But nobody does stuff like that.
You never know these days. I mean, that might be a winner right there, but...
Disney. Yeah. Copyright that. Jedi Academy, the television show. Disney Channel.
Well, I mean, I heard good things about the cartoons, the Clone Wars cartoons. I never did watch them, but I mean, is anybody here actually that upset about the loss of the expanded universe stuff here? I mean, it doesn't sound like you're that.
I never really got into the expanded.
I was even pissed about the whole thing about giving Anakin a Padawan in the cartoon series.
Hey, 404 in chat says Buzz Lightyear will make a cameo on episode 7.
God!
Excellent. Let's hope so.
To infinity and beyond!
Oh, dear gods.
No, but I'm like, oh, look, it's a cute little side character, but they didn't bring in the actual Tigrunta Shakti. No, we can't fucking do that. I mean, to my understanding, I haven't checked recently. They haven't brought her on, and she's probably one of the coolest fucking characters in the Old Republic ever. Like, let's not bring her in. Let's bring another Tigrunta. A tiny little one that we can just, like, oh, she's cute, and she'll go on off on her little adventures, and that's adorable.
I never really got into the expanded universe myself. I mean, I've seen episodes 4, 5, and 6, and I loved them. They were amazing Star Wars films. And then I saw episodes 1, 2, and 3, and that's when I sort of said, all right, I'm going to pretend they don't exist. And I figured because episodes 1, 2, and 3 were so bad, and they were actually done by Lucasfilms, that any of the third-party expanded universe stuff, comics, books, cartoons, whatever you, would have to be of less quality than what Lucasfilms could produce for episodes 1, 2, and 3. So I never really bothered with any of that.
The Clone Wars, the original set of shorts, which they had on Cartoon Network, gosh, it was years ago. Not the ones that they had in recent years. It was way back. I think it was early 2000s or mid 2000s. or mid-early 2000s.
Oh my god, I know I'm getting old when somebody refers to the early 2000s as way back. Fuck, I'm just hanging up my hat now.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to think. It wasn't the recent
Instant
one.
gray hair.
It was regular animation. It wasn't CGI. It was it looked a lot like the sort of animation from Samurai Jack, and nobody probably knows what the fuck I'm talking about. But
I know Samurai Jack.
But yeah, there was a lot of really good stuff going on there, and there wasn't a lot of dialogue in some of the scenes, but it was fantastic.
Didn't Kevin Smith get involved in some of those? I can't remember. But, I remember reading some Star Wars novels, seriously, back in the 80s. And at some point it came clear to me that none of this is going to ever make it into the movies. I mean, after the first Star Wars movie came out, there was a book that came out called Splinter of the Mind's Eye, written by Alan Dean Foster, and I read it and I thought, this is pretty cool. And it was pretty cool. And I even told people I know what the sequel to the Star Wars, for the first film is. I know what it's going to be because I read the book. And no, George Lucas clearly didn't even look at that book, let alone try and figure out what was in it. Nothing in that book happened in the movies. Nothing. That book might as well have not existed. So I'm just sitting here going, this is just what George Lucas does, people. This is just what he does. And now it's not even Lucas, so, I don't know. I kind of wish they'd just stop making Star Wars films. Then I wouldn't be mad about anything.
Yeah.
I could just go back and look at this great cultural moment and this great cultural landmark. I don't know.
Although,
since let's mention the Family Guy Star Wars, that was awesome.
Yes, they were awesome. But I still have to ask, when is Deep Space Nine going to get their Star Trek movies?
I'm betting never.
Which is fucking sad. They stopped movies after Next Generation. They had the original cast of the original series do movies. Then they brought in the Next Generation cast to do movies based on the Next Generation cast, but they just stopped.
There's no guarantee that Deep Space Nine will even exist any longer.
Yeah, you got to remember they rebooted the whole thing with Zachary Quinto and
they retconned
that's an alternate universe. Fuck that. Yes. That is an alternate universe, and they're not doing that with Star Wars. It is an alternate universe proven by the fact that old Spock exists. He was thrown in through a singularity back in time, creating a separate alternate universe, a separate timeline. It is not the same universe.
Whew, getting heated.
Well, I know it's not the same universe.
Just Ex Machina? God, shit.
And I've got to give it to you. A lot of the original Star Trek stuff was really well done. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Star Wars over Star Trek any day.
I think that's like trying to compare apples to oranges.
Pretty much.
Toothless asks a question that's worth answering. This could go on for an hour all by itself. I've never really watched Star Trek. Where should I start?
Very first pilot episode.
Oh shit!
Oh my god. Okay, as somebody who grew up loving the original series, and somebody here says never watched Enterprise. Fuck you. Enterprise was one of the best ever. In fact, I put it right. In fact, it is my favorite. It's tied between that and Deep Space Nine.
You know what? I have to agree with Dean because I've watched everything except Voyager and some of Deep Space Nine, and while Deep Space Nine had phenomenal plots, with the exception of I think the season-long episode, season 3 of Enterprise, I thought it was one of the best done, and the characters were far more engaging than most of the other series.
Mean Gene says Enterprise was crap. Mean Gene, you're dead to me. I shall never speak with you again. Same for you, X404X.
And yet,
we'll both die.
Mean Gene, you are now my best friend in the entire world.
Suck. You both suck. I hate you. Go ahead, Gene.
I will say I don't like
Trekkies.
Voyager.
If you're going to start
Voyager, I will have to say that Voyager was not the strongest series.
No, it wasn't.
There were a ton of holes in
Sweet.
Voyager.
Come on,
There were actually most of the plots in Voyager were actually taken directly from the Next Generation. They were just rewritten to fit the scenario of the Star Trek crew being trapped in the Delta Quadrant.
I wound up watching most of Voyager pretty much on accident, and I kind of started liking it basically because I started to like the characters, but I would have to agree that it's the weakest of the series. All of them, I believe it's the weakest.
And
it has a distinction.
This question is probably just for the men here, or lesbian women. Who's more bonable, 7 of 9 or Ezri Dax?
Dax.
Well, if you were going to make me choose,
I
would go. If you were going to make me choose between those two, I'd say I'd definitely say Dax. But the vulnerabilist of them all,
not Jadzia Dax. Ezri Dax.
No, Jadzia. No, Jadzia was the hot one.
No,
but
Ezri.
the hottest chick on any of the Star Wars was T'Pol. On any of the Star Treks was T'Pol from Enterprise, which was the best. Fuck you all. T'Pol was way hot.
Wait.
I'm right with
she
you,
the Vulcan?
The Vulcan.
Yes, she was the Vulcan chick.
I think I remember. Yeah, she was hot.
She was wicked hot. I mean, sure. Of course, she's supposed to be super logical, yet she's always dressed in really tight-fitting, form-fitting, cleavage-showing stuff because that's just the logical path for a Vulcan, right? But I don't care. She was hot. God, she was hot.
No, I'd go Ezri Dax any day.
Nerdgasm!
Nerdgasm!
Multiple nerdgasms.
Yeah.
I would say, honestly, I would say that if you have never gotten into Star Trek ever, if you're not going to go back to the original series, which is very much a 1960s TV show, which means all the strengths and weaknesses of 1960s television, if you're not going to start there, I actually would say start with Deep Space Nine. I really would.
Well,
I think it was the strongest, most well-developed show all the way around.
I start with the Next Generation. If you're not going to start with the original. And I do have to agree, the original was more of a serial than it was a series. It was like a Monster of the Week type of show, whereas the Next Generation, the first season of the Next Generation, they tried to do that whole serial thing with it, but after that, starting in season 2, they really started building up some universal canon.
But you know what? I think in terms of strongest writing and strongest acting, it was Deep Space Nine.
I'll have to go watch that.
Deep Space Nine, it's worth it. It really is. It really is a very, very good show. Even if you're not going to be a Trekkie, Deep Space Nine is a really good show and stands on its own merits, I think, which I don't even think you can say about Next Generation. I think you already have to be a Star Trek nerd to love Next Generation. I really think that.
Pretty much.
Just alien sex.
I don't think you have to be into Deep Space Nine. It's a real good starting point. It's a real good starting point. So, Jim says he wants to talk about net neutrality.
Yeah, we should.
Yes, we really, really have to, because this is a giant issue. The FCC has pretty much changed its mind, and now ACTA, SOPA, PIPA, it's almost like everything was actually passed through Congress, even though they weren't. I don't know.
We and by the okay, not only since they've gone ahead, they're going to go ahead and at least for now let internet service providers do whatever they want with the traffic going through their pipes. But Comcast is already charging Netflix extra, which of course gets passed on to Netflix customers. So the precedent has already been set that they can do that. And Comcast is now, and it looks like they're going to approve this too, Comcast is absorbing Time Warner Cable. So Comcast, the largest internet service provider in the United States and I believe the world, is now absorbing the second largest, which is Time Warner Cable. So if you're on any form of Roadrunner, you are now going to be absorbed by the Comcast beast. And I frankly don't want to hear, go to a competitor. Yeah, if one happens to exist and you're willing to accept speeds about 10% as fast, sure, you can go to a competitor. No, these people have grabbed onto a resource that should be a commons for all of us. And I'm sorry, I've read, yes, libertarians, I've read about the tragedy of the commons. That doesn't mean there should never be any such thing as a commons. Many commons do work, and that's why people do things like share rivers and share grazing lands. And I'm just pissed. We are allowing a corporate entity to, it's going to dictate, they're eventually going to push it to where they can dictate what sites you're even allowed to go to. Oh, sure, they'll say.
Here's the problem. The ISPs are hoping that they can turn the internet into something very much akin to cable or satellite TV, where, sure, they don't own the networks that they broadcast, but they do own the central broadcasting station that they broadcast to their customers from. Whereas someone like Comcast, they don't own Netflix. Netflix broadcasts themselves through the internet.
That's right. And now that they can extort, and extort is the correct word as far as I'm concerned, they can extort Netflix so that they can get rid of a competitor, which is what Netflix is, because let's not forget Comcast also owns NBC now. They own NBC Universal, so they're content creators as well. But you know who's next, and it's Google.
Mm-hmm.
Google and YouTube are next, and anybody offering telephone services over VoIP, they're next.
Yeah, I mean, there's already there were already stipulations in SOPA and PIPA that would allow major mainstream media conglomerates to charge based on your usage to YouTube, like based on how often you accessed YouTube and watched videos on YouTube. They could charge you more to get faster access to that content. So it was already there. So if you think Google, just because they're so big and they're so powerful right now, when it comes to, you know, our online, no, they're a target. They've been a target from the beginning.
Yeah, so is Microsoft. So are all the big search engine providers. Yeah. So are all the video services. They're all a target now. And so Comcast gets to charge customers on one end and gets to charge service providers on the other end. Good for Comcast, bad for everybody else. Bad for competition, bad for innovation, bad for freedom. And by the way, I've worked for that company. It's an evil company. I'm just beyond pissed about it. It shouldn't be allowed, as far as I'm concerned. In the show notes, I linked a video about it by what's his name from the Vlog Brothers, and he has information on where you can write to the FCC if you think this is wrong. And I do think it's wrong. If you're going to be offering internet service, you should be treated under the common carrier rules that you have to be under to offer telephone service. And the idea that you can go, as far as I'm concerned, if you don't want to be in the internet service provider business, you don't have to be. There's plenty of other people who will be glad to take that business in a regulated market. Yep. There's plenty of people that will be happy to do that. But they're going to control the backbone and the infrastructure for 2/3 of North America.
And
that's just what they're going to control.
Well, let's break it down to basics. What are they really going to control with this? The information that you have access to.
Mm-hmm. And really, the internet has become the great equalizer for everyone. As long as you have internet access, you have access to information. You can better your life. You can express yourself. So when they do that,
educate yourself. You can run your own blog, and you can compete. You could realistically compete with NBC, Fox, CNN, in the journalistic sphere with your own blog.
In fact, that's what we've done with A Voice for Men. With a ragtag crew of nobodies has created the biggest and most influential men's rights organization that has ever existed in the history of the world. They can start charging a premium or just blocking us if they want. There's already internet service providers who do that. And now precedents are being set that will allow them. They don't like our message, we can just shut you down, just like Reddit squelches us. We just found out a bunch of people on A Voice for Men are shadow banned on Reddit, by the way. A whole bunch of us, which means we can't post there. Or we can post, but nobody can see what we post. Yeah, there's ways around it, but I'm just sitting here going, this is like a big Borg collective of corporate entities that's gobbling up what used to be the great organizer, or great equalizer.
Yeah.
They can decide they want to cut us out just because they don't like us.
We're old enough to remember what it was like being on a modem. It was like really, really slow, and it took like 10 minutes to boot up and everything, and it made all those funny noises, and we remember what it was like when it was really, really fucking slow.
Oh yeah.
And to think that some people, because they're really poor, might have to go back to that kind of speed, or even, just a little bit above of a snail's pace because they're poor. That's bullshit.
Yeah. And I remember when Comcast got into this, they were so proud of it, but really they used government muscle to build that cable TV network in the first place, and it was just by luck that all that those lines of cable turned out to be useful for internet. Well, now they've got all this stuff that nobody else can compete with on performance, and now they're going to lock down their monopoly status on it. Mm-hmm. And there was a reason we created anti-monopoly laws in the first place, and it was to stop things like this.
In the States either. It's not just in the States either. Rogers here in Canada, as well as Bell, they used taxpayer funds to build their infrastructure.
Oh yeah, and there's the thing. You might be. Canada has Rogers, and I forget who's the other big one.
There's also TELUS and Shaw.
Yeah, Shaw was the one I was thinking of, but okay. Even they, while they're going to be independent of Comcast, the Comcast Time Warner monster that's now going to control most of the internet traffic in the United States, they're going to be affected by it. Seriously, there's nothing to stop them just saying, well, you want to take data from our pipes into Canada? Shaw Cable, you're going to have to pay something extra to us to take our American traffic. Why not? The theory is it's our pipes. We can do whatever we want with it. Never mind.
And technically, not just content being hosted on servers in the United States, any content hosted anywhere in the world that has to be routed through the United States. So even if I'm accessing content on a Russian server, because it has to be routed through a U.S. server, my ISP is going to be charged extra, and then I'm going to have to pay extra.
Oh, I've heard people say, and say in all seriousness, well, you're just all a bunch of entitled, spoiled brats, and you should have to pay extra. Who said you get all you can eat? Nobody ever said the internet was all you can eat. And stop being babies. Pay if you want this stuff. I'm sorry, I have very little interest in letting the multimillionaire scumbags who run Comcast, who didn't even build Comcast in the first place, get richer by charging people every possible way they can on a resource they have near complete control over.
Yeah, this is the exact opposite. Let's be honest, this is class warfare, because when you get down to it, this poor person, who has a choice between, they have a basic internet connection, and that's their way of communicating. That's their means of communication to the world. Outside of that, nobody may be able to hear what they have to say, and it might be very important. It might change the world.
When it really boils down to it, that lower class person has to make a choice. Are they going to eat that month, or are they going to pay $250 for basic internet access?
Yeah.
I'm even seeing it now. I'm sorry. I don't think this is I don't think this is paranoid. I can really see them eventually doing something like saying, here's our basic internet packages. Did you want the package that includes unlimited YouTube and Google access? Or did you want to pay by the minute for that?
Yeah.
I mean, they can start doing that if they want to. There used to be an old saying that the internet interprets censorship as damage and routes around it. That's no longer true. Not when somebody controls most of the pipes. And I can hear some of my friends saying, well, smart consumers will know how to work around it. Yeah, okay. Thank you for leaving 98% of the population out of your considerations there. I don't know. It's hard for me not to rant about this. I'm just going to shut up now and let someone else speak.
Yeah.
Jim, you have something to say?
Jim.
I think the biggest issue I see with this is, like Rachel said, the internet is the great equalizer. You can learn things that didn't exist, or that you didn't think existed. Dean pointed out how AVFM, because of all the research some nobodies did, and I honestly think they're phenomenal people because of it, have created something that shows people what really is going on. But if they hate the message, boom, you can't say anything.
Yeah.
There's an old saying, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more knowledge
It
people
really
are
is.
able to get, the better chance they have of slowing down or stopping monsters like Comcast.
And the internet is really the last stronghold for free speech on the planet, because you can be censored in every other media. It doesn't matter where you go. And this is the last place that you can really say things without really being, or even now, even in forums, just random places, they're just cracking down on what you're allowed to say. And when they start to limit that, you're going to just start seeing that just disappear. You can't say
even major media. If you're a writer for a newspaper, your editor tells you what you can and can't say. If you're a television news broadcaster, your producer tells you what you can and can't say. If you're a radio news broadcaster, your producer tells you what you can and cannot say.
To me, it's very much like if you let somebody own the entire interstate highway system and you let them decide who's allowed to drive on it, not based on basic rules of the road for safety, but who deserves it and who doesn't. Who should be allowed to have commerce on our highways and
who makes enough money?
Not?
Who drives a nice enough car? Who dresses in a nice enough suit? Who eats who drinks coffee from Starbucks as opposed to Dunkin' Donuts? It might sound like paranoia, but I mean it's essentially the exact same principle. Oh, you drink your coffee from Dunkin' Donuts? Well, you can't drive on this road.
I don't even think it's paranoia anymore.
I've seen it happen.
I don't think it's paranoia anymore. I mean, I will point out to A Voice for Men as one example, but I'm certain there are others. We are actively being censored in multiple countries, okay, by corporate entities in almost every single case. We're being censored by corporate entities within the United States. And it is overt censorship. It has an impact on us. And it's just they're being free, willy-nilly allowed to do this. And I can see it becoming worse. And it does frighten me. This was the place, the internet was where you could get out any message you wanted to. And it's increasingly being locked down and controlled by government and corporate entities whose primary interest is lining their own pockets. And that, I mean, this is a change of subject, but not really. Yeah, you talk about what we've built on A Voice for Men in the men's rights community online, right? We are seeing peer-reviewed scientific papers coming out now just in this last week that are echoing things that were first pointed out by men's rights activists. And now they're echoing it on things like sexual assault against men. And so they're not crediting us for it, but it's like, wait a minute, we were ahead of the curve on that research by several years, and now the research is appearing in the regular peer-reviewed journals. I have to suspect that some of these journals, these researchers, got the idea from some of us in the first place, because we put it in the air first. And I don't know.
Yeah, and you could say goodbye to that. If the FCC doesn't reconsider the decision that they've recently made, you could say goodbye to that.
Well, and like I said, if you look at that Vlogbrothers video that's in the show notes, there's instructions there to go and comment for the FCC. I've already done so. And my position is really clear. Comcast, no corporate entity has an inherent right to even offer internet service. And I take that very strong position. You don't have an inherent right to even be on the internet, Comcast. You don't. And so they should have to play by rules that the public at large, I don't care who wants to rant that that's collectivism. Fuck you. This is something that affects all of us. This is like allowing somebody to own the air supply. I'm sorry. No.
Or the airwaves, for that matter. I mean, there's a reason
Let's allow
why
one person to own the air. Yeah.
Are free. The airwaves are free, and anybody in the public domain can broadcast through the airwaves.
That's right. Hey, how
They're
about you?
Absolutely free.
How about you allow me to buy a plot of land?
No, the internet is global. It is a global infrastructure.
Just to bolster your point here, okay? You might want to let everybody know exactly where the pipelines are actually built, okay? Because it's one thing, okay? I can argue easily that if they actually owned the property on which the pipelines are built, that's fine. They can charge whatever the hell they want. But the fact of the matter is that they don't actually own the property on which the lines are built. They are almost always renting or signing contracts with cities and states.
Yeah, in fact, here's something that a lot of people don't know. Most of the internet lines that are run right now, where they started and where a whole lot of the backbones are running along, believe it or not, railroad track lines. Back in the 19th century when the railroads were being built, they made deals, all the railroads made deals with the governments for what we'll call right-of-ways or throughways, where they could build rail lines, stretching across thousands of miles all over North America. And then when they came up with the telegraph, somebody had a really neat idea. We could string our telegraph lines along these railway lines, because these railroad companies have the rights to this land, these narrow strips of land. So we'll run the telegraph lines along those. Well, when the telephone came along, where do you think they ran most of those lines? Along the telephone lines, along the railroad tracks. And so where do you think most of the internet traffic is going? Same exact place. So in some cases, 150-year-old right-of-way, throughway property of the railroad companies. In fact, there's even places where you've got telephone and internet traffic running along railroad tracks that are no longer there or no longer used, and those railroad companies are making their money on train lines they no longer use because telephone and internet traffic's running along them. And then within your local city, these cable companies will have made contracts with the city government to be allowed to run the lines. They'll have made deals with state and local governments to be allowed to dig up the streets, dig up the land, whatever. In many cases, they even, made deals where, like, you're a farmer or you've got some land, well, we need to run some lines under your property. And the government says, well, you don't have a say-so. We're just going to run under your property. It's not going to affect you, so just shut up and let us do it. So all of these internet lines that they titularly own, they got special rights and privileges from the government all along, and from other private as well as government entities, just to run them. So this is purely ours, we created it. No, you didn't. The Department of Defense created it, first off, and then second, after that, when it became more public, it's still using public access lines all over the place, and public property all over the place.
Yeah, the internet wouldn't exist in the form it does today if they would have been forced to not use those public thoroughfares. And because they're public thoroughfares, who exactly is paying for the maintenance and upkeep of the grounds themselves?
Well, they pay some of it, but the people themselves pay. But the company, yeah, certainly the companies do some of it themselves. The internet companies do some of it themselves. But in many cases, it's the local municipalities and the railroad companies. The bottom line is this is a complex series of contractual arrangements, and they're taking advantage of something they shouldn't be allowed to take advantage of, as far as I'm concerned. I'm telling you right now, if Comcast wants to get out of the internet business because they say, well, we want to do whatever we want with our pipes, there's thousands of companies that would just snap that up and say, we'll get into this regulated market. Mm-hmm. There's money to be made here. And that's the real thing. This isn't about, at least for me, it's not for saying I don't want this Comcast to make money. Comcast is making oodles of money. They just want more. And rant rave.
CEO of Comcast
and I think the easiest.
He wants $25 million a year.
And I think the easiest way for these guys to start taking care of it is to start buying up the land. Look, they've got enough money at this point that if they really wanted to, they could say, well, to hell with it. If you guys want to have your net neutrality, fine, as long as we're on, public domain as far as where we're running our lines, but, we're going to start buying it up. Now, the point at which they actually start buying the land upon which the lines are run, well, yeah, then it's a different story. Then they can charge whatever the hell they want because they actually own the land that it is running on. And they've got enough money at this point to start doing that. Even if they've got to start ripping down some of their internet service in the process in order to run lines in a different way. They've got the money now to do that.
Yeah.
Rachel, you wanted to say something?
Well, I mean, also think about it this way. I mean, I heard someone bring up the topic of on this topic, startup businesses. You're just starting out, and people may not be able to access your business. With this in place, not as many people will be able to see your content anymore or access it quickly, and that could completely destroy a whole lot of different companies. And it's just, so when people are like, oh, well, they're just, trying to make a buck, well, you're going to shit on a whole bunch of other new companies and just stifle it. You're going to stifle free speech, you're going to stifle the ability for the common man to get ahead.
I agree. I can't say I disagree enough. I guess we're starting to end the show on a downer, but
yeah. Well, maybe we can bring it back to a silly place. I don't know.
Well, I will mention again. You can comment to the FCC directly if you go to the video Hank versus Hank net neutrality debate in 3 minutes. It explains it pretty well, and I'll make sure to update the show notes to include where you can go to comment to the FCC if you want to. I did that, and I encourage others to as well. Who knows how much good it'll do, but it's worth it. And that's all I have to say. And by the way, Enterprise rules, and the rest of you all drool. Fuck you. So. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have something on the net neutrality. And it kind of goes back to Rachel's point. It's cutting down the ability of the lower levels of society to move forward into bettering their lives. It's already hard enough to get ahead in life, continuing to do this, creating the monopolies. They're just it's creating the aristocracy all over again. And sadly, and people might get upset when I say this, it's also creating a wage slave class in the middle class and lower.
Well, I can't quite disagree. So, should we close with something just a little less upsetting and just encourage people to go check out that? I'm putting the link now in the show notes on AVFM.
Let's think of something really fun.
Well, what's going to happen on the next episode of Game of Thrones?
Oh.
Anybody got any prediction?
Oh gosh.
I mean, how's Tyrion going to get out of this shit? That's what I want to know. How the hell is Tyrion
Someone is going to break his
shit?
ass out of prison.
I don't know if he's going to get it broken out or if he's actually going to find a way to talk his way out of it, but I have a whole lot of respect for Tyrion now. He is a very, very intelligent
I still like Jaime, despite what they fucking did to him with the whole making him a rapist, because he totally redeemed himself in the next episode.
I'll have to agree with you. I mean, I saw the fourth episode, and I'm like, you know, despite what they did to him in the third one, I think he's coming along. He's making his mistakes, but he's coming along and he's becoming a better person. And I would not be surprised to see
the judges are, though. Remember who the judges are on the council. There's Tywin.
Yeah.
There's Maester. Can't remember his name. Maester.
I don't know, but there's
Maester in King's Landing, and there's also Oberon.
Yeah, Oberon.
Well,
He's a man after my own heart.
I think Oberon is actually probably the most wild card of this, and I believe he might actually be the one to give the dissenting opinion. But surprisingly enough, I think I think this is where Tyrion's father will actually show some compassion for him. And
fuck no, not at all.
Okay.
Tyrion's dad.
Tywin.
This shows my bias of I actually believe in the goodness of people deep down.
Sardo,
Well,
okay, Anne Frank.
When it comes to Tywin, stop. When
Um,
Tyrion was born, Tywin brought him out to the middle of the lake and tried to let him drown.
No, he changed his mind at the last minute. That's what he said, isn't it?
That's what he said.
Tywin also, did the whole thing and totally fucked up his marriage to that common girl, and basically said, "Oh no, listen, she was a whore the whole time." Spoiler: she wasn't.
Here's what I don't get. Here's what I don't get. I seriously don't get it. And maybe it's because I've been watching and I know too much or whatever, but no, I can't find a single fan who believes that Tyrion did it. I can't find a single plausible... Anybody who knows Tyrion knows he wouldn't do this. So why is Cersei so convinced that he did this?
Because he said that one day all of your plans are going to blow up in your face and you'll know when I've gotten my revenge, that kind of shit. But really, she's never really liked him. She tortured him in his crib as a baby. She's,
Okay, she doesn't like him. Granted. But, I would think, okay, if she's really the grieving mother, and maybe that's all it is, it's not rational,
I don't know,
I would think it would be obvious.
She's also a very vengeful cunt, and I'm saying that with a capital
A. But don't you want revenge against the person who actually did it? Why is she so convinced it's Tyrion?
Dean, she's convinced, like Rachel said, because of what he said. The problem is she is so emotionally distraught at the moment, she's not thinking clearly. A rational person, yes, would probably want revenge against the person who actually did it. She is not rational.
She just wants to see some blood right now. That's what you're saying.
She's never been a rational person. Let's think about that. I mean, she was like, okay, Joffrey's going to be totally okay on the throne. And even after even after she saw in front of her, that he was difficult to control, that he was a sadistic asshole, like, no, I'm down with this. Let's go ahead. When has she ever been a rational person?
Well, I mean, and she was playing dangerous games all that time fucking her brother and figuring that the king would never...
When has she ever been the queen of good decisions?
I'll grant you that, but still, it's one of those... She's gone overboard. I mean, she may never have been rational, but she's gone overboard.
And she's a drunk now.
She is a drunk now. Yeah, she has been drinking very heavily, hasn't she? Yeah, she even commented on that in the last episode. How much you've been drinking a lot? Something like, I don't know. She said something about it. So yeah, she's drinking a lot, and she's grieving, and she's irrational. Well, that's the only way that makes sense, because I'm looking at it and I'm going, how does anybody believe Tyrion did it? How? Okay, I mean, you've got the circumstantial. He handed him the wine cup. Okay. And now we're pretty sure it was the wine that poisoned him. I thought it was the pie. Okay, misdirection. It was the wine. But still, it's just not his style. It's not his way of doing things. She doesn't know her own brother well enough to know that he's not that fucking stupid, that he's not suicidal. I mean, I don't know. But I guess you're right. She's just out of her mind.
She is. And right now she just wants blood, and she doesn't really care whose blood it is. So it might as well be...
Has anyone mentioned how Daenerys Targaryen is kind of getting a little crazy?
Oh my god. I watched her, and I'm like, she seems okay, and then at the very end, her line of justice is justice, it's like...
You're like, shit, lady!
Yeah, she's got the whole thing going where she seems all merciful because she's freeing the slaves. Now it's starting to look like, well, that's just because it's a strategy that works or something.
You're starting to see sort of a sadistic nature coming out in her, and you're like, fuck, that's why they overthrew the Targaryens.
Well, it's... You gotta remember, I mean, the Targaryen Empire only lasted because of incest. I mean, the Targaryens only ever bred with other Targaryens.
Yeah, so it's like,
she is
banjos upon banjos upon banjos.
She is a product of generations of incest.
You know what? No offense, but I don't think that's enough to make somebody a psycho killer. Okay, I really don't think that.
It was for Joffrey.
Yeah.
I don't think it was totally the incest that made Joffrey a sociopath. Look at his mother.
Well, look, yeah, that is true. And
his
you have to
brother
look
isn't
at
that bad.
Yeah, his brother's helpful, like
his brother is sane. Like, his brother is gentle by comparison.
He's like the likes fluffy kittens and stuff.
Yes, you grow up with a homicidal maniac. You tend to be the exact opposite because you see things that you don't like, and you're like, okay, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Possibly. But I see what you mean, though. I mean, it seems like Daenerys is starting to
lose her shit a bit.
She's starting to taste that Iron Throne, and it's starting to drive her a little power hungry.
Yeah.
Well, and every victory makes her a little more arrogant, right?
Yeah.
She hasn't had a setback in a while.
Yeah, let's hammer some people on some wood. Let's just and hang them up on a clothesline, just like wee. That was a little dark. I'm sorry.
Oh no,
that was great.
Well, it was in revenge. Let's be clear, it was in revenge. But
but I understand that much. But it's like not every child of the aristocracy was an ass. or every woman or every person, not every part of the aristocracy, were just really terrible.
Toothless in the chat actually does make a very, very good point. They were the people who were hung up and nailed to crosses were slavers who did the exact same thing to chill.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, you're right. Didn't they send the heads back or something?
No, they nailed them up as mile markers.
Yes.
Shit, man. That is right. But
what, you missed it? Yeah, they were using crucified children as mile markers.
I think I missed that part because I was late coming in and I turned on the stream and I might have missed that part.
Yeah, they had strung up children, they had strung up crucified children as mile markers, 163, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
So she was getting revenge for that. Yeah.
But still, man, you have to, I don't know. Retribution doesn't always make everything better.
No, but sometimes it does send a clear message.
Yeah, she was making an example of them. I get that much, but it's just, you had the city. You didn't have to nail people to some wood. You didn't have to be. You're supposed to, I guess, take the higher ground.
You know what I would have done in her case? I mean, after all, she did start with kill the masters. I mean, she's done that on all of them. You know what I would have done? I would have let the slaves vote on who the worst masters were to get that treatment. Like, who are the ones who actually crucified the children? There. Go do that to them.
I mean, that's a democratic vote that big would take time, and come on, she's got a throne to overthrow.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, throne to take,
I think she was really just trying to send a message that in her empire, her new empire, when she takes the throne, slavery is not okay. And she will not tolerate slavery in her empire.
But as you said before, I think it was like you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain, and that's what I think is going to happen with Daenerys.
Yeah.
Because,
Khal Drogo died a hero. I fucking love Drogo.
No, but then they brought him back to life, and then she suffocated him. So...
Well, because he wasn't really alive, but I will say this, going back at least one, if not two episodes of this show, I have said I do not see a good ending for Daenerys. I see things taking a bad turn for her at some point, and maybe we're starting to see the beginnings of that.
Yep. I mean, at first I was all down with her. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. You're freeing the slaves. You're raising your dragons. You're bringing yourself up and moving on in the world, like, good for you. And now it's like, shit, lady. What the hell's going on?
She's fallen to the dark side.
It may be premature, but I think we're starting to see the indicators of it.
Mm-hmm. And whereas, that was the opposite of Jaime for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting you bring up Jaime, because personally, I think the way that Tyrion is going to get out of this whole mess is, I think Jaime is going to represent him in court.
Well, Jaime has always been the one who is kind to Tyrion, or who every member in the family likes to some extent. I mean, there's few people in the family that don't like Jaime. I mean, everybody has like differing opinions about everybody else, but Jaime is the guy who tends to have an unbiased opinion going into every situation.
Except he's still doffing his sister.
Yeah, despite the fact that he is engaging in incestual sex with his sister, it seems like out of all the Lannisters, Jaime has the strongest moral compass.
That is.
Well, actually, I mean, the problem is that, a lot of shit happened to him while he was the King's Guard, and of course...
Tyrion is the one with the biggest moral compass among the Lannisters, but even he has...
I think Jaime's actually heading in that direction.
I think he's heading more towards being a bit more like Brienne, because Brienne, was like, she really adhered to that moral code despite everything, and I think he was impressed by that. Even if he thought she was almost...
You could really, really see it in Brienne's eyes that she is starting to fall for Jaime. She does.
Oh, she's in love with him. Let's be honest.
She's totally in love with Jaime, and you could see it in Jamie's eyes that he's starting to come around. He's starting to see Brienne in almost the same way. That
I kind of want to ship. I kind of want to ship them a bit, but you know, it's probably never going to happen.
But I do have to cut it here. We've been on for 2 hours. We have to wrap up the show. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Rachel, Jim, Dean. I want to thank James Huff for running the back room. I want to thank all of you listening. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to come and listen to us shoot the shit. Anybody have any passing remarks before we close out the show?
I just want to mention that. Fuck George. I want to mention that next week on Aaron Pitsy, our guest is going to be a woman from an Irish group called Amen, which specializes in helping men who are in domestic violence relationships and doing it right. And we now have a confirmation that Senator Ann Cools will definitely be appearing on Revelations with Aaron Pitsy 2 weeks after that. She's definitely coming. So we've got that to look forward to. I'm looking forward to seeing people at the Men and Boys Conference at the end of June and the beginning of June. I hope people are in Toronto for the Toronto Domestic Violence Symposium, which Aaron Pitsy will also be at. And fuck George Lucas.
Jim, do you have anything you want to say before we close out?
Well, you know what? I'm not going to go so far as to say fuck George Lucas, but I will say Enterprise was a phenomenal show, and may the 4th be with you.
Yeah!
All right, well, again, thanks everybody for listening in, and remember, take the red pill, huh?
Music.